Open world game speedruns are always interesting due to the endless possibilities and paths available as a result of a non-linearly designed world. But most interesting is always how players apply advanced techniques and optimize routes into these massively large worlds. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is one of the most active speedrunning communities in recent years with almost 500 runs, and the absolute precision of world record optimization is one to be remembered. This is the world record history of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Our timeline starts on the 3rd of March 2017, with Seth Blink's speedrun clocking it at 2 hours and 22 minutes. This run was unique in two ways. First, it was done on the game's official day of release under 24 hours, and second, this was possible because Nintendo actually sent Seth Blink a Switch and a copy of the game a whole month before the official release as a way to gain exposure. This way, Seth would benefit from being able to explore the world of Breath of the Wild early from a speedrunning perspective, and Nintendo would benefit from the free advertising. The result of this was that speedrunners could explore and theorize strategies and routes before the game was even released. As an example, Seth posted a video titled The Great Plateau to the final boss in 12 minutes. The Great Plateau is the starting area of the game, and the video was released on March 1st, 2017, a whole 2 days before the game's official release. Seth's 2 hour and 22 minute run was not uploaded, but shortly after this record, he went on to post a video explaining a 1.5 hour route that he had discovered. This wasn't a run since he died at the game's final boss, Calamity Ganon, and stated that he couldn't beat the last part of the game consistently without better gear. It was simply a showcase of a possible much faster route that speedrunners could take. The route starts off in a standard fashion, requiring Link to complete 4 shrines that must be completed in order to gain the 4 Sheikah Slate abilities and receive the paraglider. Here is a map of the Great Plateau. These go in the order Magnesis, Cryonis, Stasis, then Bombs. Afterwards, the route had Link glide off the plateau and run right up to the final area of the game, Ganon's castle. Outside the castle would be a pillar that players could climb up and glide into the castle. The climbing of this pillar is quite inconsistent, as it's almost too vertical for Link to climb, and some exploit of the game's physics systems would have to come into play. When running up slopes in Breath of the Wild, Link will slow down until eventually he stops and slides back a large amount. The trick here is by resetting Link's upward velocity by hitting small bumps on the engravings of the pillar. By doing this, Link's vertical velocity would reset back to 0, causing him not to slide downwards. Seth explained that it is possible to reach the final boss by gliding off the pillar, but it would be impossible to beat the game because Link's starting items do not have enough durability to last the whole fight. So in order to get adequate gear, Link would have to glide into a lower section of the castle, which contains a room filled with endgame weapons with high durability and damage. From here, Seth details a route that enables Link to pick up good weapons either by defeating enemies or gathering them. The route saw Link end up in Zelda's study, where they would climb from the outside of the building, then glide into the boss room to start the Ganon fight. The Ganon fight included 4 mini-bosses: Wind Blight, Water Blight, Fire Blight, and Thunder Blight Ganon. After the 4 mini-bosses lies the final boss, Calamity Ganon. Originally, if the game were to be completed normally, since there are 4 dungeons in the game, each of the Ganon Blights would reside in those dungeons, and after defeating them, they would not appear in the final fight. However, since this is a speedrun route, that's not possible, and so the 4 Blights would have to be defeated in Ganon's castle. This was by no means a perfectly optimized route, but provided a general path for speedrunners to follow in the early stages of the game's release. The day after the game's release on March 4th, 2017, a speedrunner named Venick overtook Seth, setting a new world record of 1 hour and 24 minutes. Following Seth's route, he saved time by holding onto the edge of the towers and falling down a good amount before latching back on and repeating. After gliding off of the Great Plateau, he did something that wasn't mentioned in Seth's guide, that being, he used an amiibo. Various creatures and items can be spawned into Breath of the Wild depending on what amiibo was used. Here, Venick used the Link amiibo to spawn Epona, Link's horse. This was controversial as it wasn't made clear whether or not amiibos were allowed in any percent runs. Nevertheless, it was an officially recognized run. The rest of the run followed Seth's route. It was an impressive run, but there were definitely areas that could be improved on. For example, on his way to Ganon's castle, he died to a Guardian Beam, shaving off about 2 minutes, and when climbing Princess Zelda's study, the building which would allow Link to glide into the final boss room, he ran out of stamina multiple times, falling down to the bottom. Even with these hindrances, Venek's run was still way ahead of Seth's time by 58 minutes. But he wasn't done. 3 days after, on March 7th, 2017, Venek set another world record of 1 hour and 4 minutes using a newly discovered technique, whistle sprinting. Whistle sprinting is a technique that allows Link to run at nearly full sprinting speed without consuming stamina. To perform this technique, the player would have to hold down the whistle button, which in most cases was D-pad down, while repeatedly tapping the sprint button while running. This was awkward on the hands but proved to be a pivotal strategy in future speedruns. Whistle sprinting itself was very slightly slower than regular sprinting, and so the optimized method would be to sprint normally until the stamina bar is almost depleted, then whistle sprint to let the stamina recharge. This saved an enormous amount of time over the whole run. The run was also played in French because it was discovered that cutscenes with voice acting are finished the fastest in French. Venek didn't use an amiibo for this run and instead glided onto a herd of horses in the overworld. Unfortunately, he missed his mark by a small margin and spent some time chasing and catching the horse. A unique interaction against Fired like Ganon saved him considerable time. That interaction being, if Link cancels the 4th hit of his combo animation by swapping to another weapon, the boss would aggro onto Link slower than if he finished the 4-hit combo. So by swapping weapons before the combo finishes, more damage could be done at a faster rate. Venek completed the final boss deathless, which saved a ton of time. All of this saw the completion of 1 hour and 4 minutes. Venek was confident that he could get a sub 1 hour run very soon. On the 9th of May 2017, a new run was uploaded by a runner named Orchestral at a time of 1 hour and 50 seconds. Orchestral was a runner who had been speedrunning many Zelda games before Breath of the Wild, such as Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. Like Venek's first recorded run, Orca used a Link amiibo to spawn a horse, but what was interesting is that the game was run in German. Previously, I said that French was the fastest language, and while that is technically true, it's not the whole story. Basically, it comes down to region locks. The Wii U has a few coded regions, but in the context of Breath of the Wild speedruns, it breaks down into 2 categories, PAL and NTSC. PAL is used for EU and OCE, and NTSC was used for everywhere else. Players tested different languages on these 2 regions and found that for PAL, German is actually faster. For NTSC and the Switch version of the game, however, French is faster. Almost all of the runs back then were done on the Wii U, because the Wii U version had faster loading speeds than the Switch by about 30 seconds. As for why the Wii U was faster, nobody knew. Orchestral beat their own record only a day after that, on the 10th of March 2017, finishing a run at 1 hour and 11 seconds. It seemed like Orca was going to be the one to finally claim a run of sub 1 hour. Gymnast86 was a very reputable player across all of the Zelda speedrunning domain. He currently holds multiple first and second world record positions in games like Twilight Princess HD, where out of the 6 speedrunning categories, he holds 3 first places, a second place, and a third place. That's 5 out of 6 categories that he holds a top 3 in. Of course, this isn't only limited to Twilight Princess. He also proved dominant in other games like Wind Waker and Skyward Sword. And so it was inevitable that he was going to make his mark on Breath of the Wild, and a mark did he make. This was the first sub 1 hour run, utilizing mechanics like shield surfing. Gymnast86 had some new strategies for killing Ganon too. On Wind by Ganon, he headshot the boss repeatedly with ancient arrows, stun locking the boss with higher damage output. All of these small optimizations led to a time of 58 minutes and 1 second. What followed was a battle between Venek, Gymnast86, and Orchestral, constantly setting new world records day after day, sometimes even multiple on the same day. 58 minutes went down to 54 minutes, then 53, 51, all the way down to 46. A couple of new strategies were discovered. In Calamity Ganon's second phase, it's possible to stun lock the boss using a double-handed sword by holding down the attack button so that Link swings in a circle, then letting go, making Link smash the ground when Ganon's face comes back up. The timing is not very precise, but you needed to be cautious of your stamina and weapon durability. To get into this state though, Link needs to parry one of Ganon's laser beams, which Ganon has a random chance of doing. Orchestral was the first runner to utilize fall damage cancelling in a world record run at a time of 47 minutes. Fall damage cancelling allows Link to fall from any height by abusing the force unequipped functionality of the game. To perform this technique, Link must first have a weapon equipped. As Link is falling, hold down the throw weapon button, and as Link is about to hit the ground, let go of the button and immediately unequip the weapon. This can also be done with shields by unequipping active shields rather than active weapons. This saves considerable time before Link receives the paraglider. Now you might be thinking, why don't they just fall damage cancel out of the Great Plateau? Well, the answer is that the game is coded in a way that you might not be expecting. When jumping off of the Great Plateau, it's not actually the fall damage that kills you, but a void floor around the plateau that automatically kills Link as soon as he touches it. Therefore, Link can't fall damage cancel out of the plateau without the paraglider. Gymnast86 discovered a new and faster plateau route that involved obtaining the Magnesis power-up before the bombs, and another route of Pyro Castle was found, one that didn't involve the climbing of the outside pillar. Occasionally, other runners like Botw and Botw would also claim a world record, but throughout all their runs, the traversal on the Great Plateau was similar. That is, in all the speedruns, Link still needs to run the majority of ground. Surely there's a better way to do this. This is what's known as a stasis launch. A stasis launch involves freezing an object using the stasis ability, then continuously hitting it with a weapon to stack momentum. Link can then climb onto the object and stay attached when it comes out of stasis, resulting in Link launching through the air with the object. Usually this would be performed by swinging a two-headed weapon, then using an arrow or a bomb to change the direction of force applied on the object. Botw used this strategy in the world record run of 45 minutes and 51 seconds to travel from the Stasis Shrine to the Plateau Temple using a boulder, and many other runners would also start using this strat, including the other world record claimers. This route became more and more optimized as the world record time came closer and closer to sub 40 minutes by runners Chaotic Ace and Gymnast86. Getting inspiration by Botw's boulder launch from the Stasis Shrine to the temple, Chaotic Ace started experimenting other launches that could potentially be a time save on the Great Plateau, and on the 1st of April 2017, he uploaded this run. This launch is from a small cliff that glides away from the top of the temple. From here, Link could climb on top of a boulder, backflip off right as the boulder is about to come out of stasis, to send himself into a flying motion in which he can then pull out the paraglider and glide much faster than what a horse could allow. Although the glide to the boulders took approximately 30 seconds, the previous strategy involved teleporting from the temple to the Magnesis Shrine, which had a loading screen which also took around 30 seconds. And the boulder launch was way faster than the horse. During this period of time, more amiibos were also being incorporated, specifically the Toon Link amiibo which spawns fish, an ingredient that Link could use to craft a +3 Might Elixir before the Ganon fight. Finally, on the 21st of April 2017, the first sub 40 run was made. This run was made by Botw, in which he didn't use any amiibos nor any new routes, just simply a cleaner run, specifically in the Ganon fight. Notable time losses included him accidentally bonking a Bokoblin after Cryonis and not using a shock arrow for Lizalfos. He had a gold split at Blights with a 433, but said that he had actually had a 410 before in his practice runs, so this was nowhere near the best he could have done. With sub 40 broken and no mutable strats being produced apart from more launches, runs slowed down with only 3 records to be seen in 4 months, ending with a run uploaded by Ikitrix on the 5th of August 2017. Ikitrix was a runner who had been experimenting with a lot of different routes and strategies and had numerous encounters with potential world record runs previously. In his run, instead of doing the usual route of Magnesis, Bombs, Cryonis, and Stasis, he does Magnesis, Cryonis, Stasis, and then Bombs. This routing allowed him to use a lot more Stasis launching with tree trunks. Many called this the Tao Pai Pai style due to the resemblance to the Dragon Ball character. He used the boulder launch to travel from the Stasis Shrine to the temple, then performed a subsequent tree launch from the temple to the Bomb Shrine. After completing the Bomb Shrine, he tree launched back to the temple. And on his way to the castle, he hopped off his horse to perform yet another launch into the castle itself. He was well ahead of the record with a time save of 47 seconds heading into phase 2 of Calamity Ganon. Here, he gets lucky and Ganon shoots a beam right after the phase transition, allowing him to stunlock immediately. All that's left was to complete the last Ganon phase, which he did swiftly, ending the run at 38 minutes and 21 seconds. From here was a drought. There were still runs being made, but mainly done by two people by the names of Song and Lulucore, and runs that were sub 40 minutes were few and far between. Iki Trix's world record was a hard one to beat, and it remained the world record for a long time. Until May 18th, 2018. It had been 9 months since the last record, and it was finally broken by Lulucore with a run of 37 minutes and 43 seconds. It was also the first world record to use a technique never seen before, super speed launching, otherwise known as SSL. Super speed launching is a technique quite similar to the launches that we've seen before. However, it's different in that the speed and distance achieved by SSL is so much greater than that of a regular launch. In fact, the speed of an SSL quite literally goes over double the amount of a regular launch. When performing a stasis launch, due to the hardware limitations of the Wii U and Switch, the game tends to lag for a bit to load in areas of the game. We're going to take advantage of this lag. By pulling out the paraglider frame perfect on a lag frame, Link's speed gets increased immensely. We can break this down into 3 steps. Step 1 is stasis launch, where you will have to perform and set up a normal stasis launch as usual. Step 2 is lag induction, where you will need to generate some lag in your game. There are ways to make this more consistent than just relying on the game's loading, such as opening the various menus that the games have. Maps, inventory, anything really. Step 3 is to perform a frame perfect paraglider pull. Link must pull out his paraglider on a lag frame that we've generated. With some analysis, it was discovered that when lag frames occur prior to the opening of the pause menu, the frame after closing the menu will almost always be a lag frame. Therefore, one of the most consistent ways to do it was to generate lag frames, open the pause menu, then close the pause menu, and immediately pull out the paraglider a singular frame after closing. Lulucore performed an SSL from the temple almost straight to Hyrule Castle raw using no menus. He had even surprised himself, stating that it was the most random SSL ever.
That's the most random SSL ever!
This record somewhat sparked the speedruns back up, as Lulucore's time was taken down a month later by Song on a run timer of 36 minutes and 48 seconds. From here onwards, Song continued to top his own record 7 times. Throughout his streak, Song rerouted the Great Plateau into the following: Stasis, Cryo, Magnesis, Bombs. Getting Stasis early meant that he could plan out a route from shrine to shrine using various objects to launch. It was also at this time that people were experimenting with ways to clip through the overworld, and he used 2. The first clip was from the starting area of the game where Link wakes, the Shrine of Resurrection, to the Stasis Shrine. To do this, you first need to receive the Sheikah Slate from the pedestal. This unlocks the scope ability. You must first use the scope ability before performing the clip. Afterwards, you need to run up to the edge of the wall and line your camera up correctly using the minimap as a guide. On the minimap, the top left corner of the yellow arrow icon should be pointing a little bit to the left of the top left blue plus sign. The top right corner of the yellow arrow should go through the top right plus sign, and the bottom yellow arrow corner should be to the right of the bottom plus sign. If you line up correctly, repeatedly running and pressing the scope button will clip you through the wall. This is a great time save, as you don't need to watch the cutscene when Link exits the Shrine of Resurrection, and you also don't need to waste time running and climbing to the tundra area since you pretty much exit right on top of it. The second clip was Shrine Clips. As the name suggests, Shrine Clips are a way to get Link into the shrines without having to watch the cutscene of Link tapping his Sheikah Slate. To perform a Shrine Clip, there are some requirements that need to be met first. Before performing the Shrine Clip, Link needs skew. Skew can be described as the angle at which Link is at when he's shield surfing. To get skew, you'll have to shield jump onto the shrine and immediately unequip the shield. Each of the shrines on the Great Plateau will have different edges that Link needs to shield jump on. If done correctly, Link will tilt diagonally for a second, and this is when you know you have skew. Afterwards, you will have to line Link up very specifically with the shrine. Again, like creating skew, this is specific for each shrine. When Link is lined up, you have to perform a forward shield jump to clip into the shrine. Finally, the most impactful technique found during this time was one called bullet time bouncing. Bullet time bouncing is a technique where Link bounces off the head of a mob, gaining a lot of speed. This, paired with SSL, could get Link from the temple straight to Ganon's castle. To perform this, you need a shield, a bow, some arrows, and you need to position Link so that he is above a mob. You need to then hold down the block button, then jump off and perform a shield flip. When you're on top of the mob, hold down shoot to enter bullet time, then right as Link's about to land on their head, exit bullet time. The angle at which Link lands on the mob is very sensitive and therefore very precise. For example, landing on the upper back versus landing on the lower back of a bokoblin would send Link flying in vastly different directions. Wallhack was on a roll, setting 8 records in 3 weeks, the last one being 31 minutes and 6 seconds on November 17, 2017. The player who stopped his reign went by the name of Sketodara. Sketodara is a Japanese player who'd beaten Wallhack's record by just 5 seconds at 31 minutes and 1 second on the 22nd of December 2018. The run route and tech were mostly the same. Sketodara opted for bullet time bouncing whenever they could have instead of stasis launching. For example, after the stasis shrine, instead of performing 2 tree launches in a row like Wallhack does, he does 1 bullet time bounce. But Sketodara's record would be short-lived as Wallhack came back on the 8th of January 2019 with a time of 30 minutes and 31 seconds. He had also started to incorporate more bullet time bounces rather than stasis launches, as stasis launches required the extra time to build up momentum. He had also used a new way to skip the bomb shrine entirely called wind bombing. Wind bombs are a way to send Link flying with just a bow, some arrows, and the bomb ability. To perform wind bombs, you first have to hold the lock-on button and jump off a ledge. Then quickly press L to spawn a circle bomb, and then L2 to enter bullet time. From here, swap to the square bombs, spawn a square bomb, then immediately swap back to the circle bombs to detonate it. The circle bomb causes a chain detonation of the square bomb and you'll be launched with high velocity. This allows you to launch Link at any time provided there is a ledge and you have a bow and some arrows. This would spark a rivalry between Wallhack and Sketodara as they constantly overtook each other's records month after month after month, until Sketodara's last record on the 6th of November 2020 at 26 minutes 43 seconds. In the course of this time, something amazing had been discovered, in that you can entirely skip Windblight Ganon by shooting an arrow at him as the cutscene plays. To do this, players would have to know where Windblight would spawn, preemptively shoot an arrow at the spawn location, then immediately run in the room to trigger the cutscene before the arrow reaches where Windblight would spawn. Throughout all his runs, Sketodara was playing in Japanese. Remember that French is the fastest language, so that means that Sketodara could be faster still just by changing the language. Now entering Player 5. Player 5 was a speedrunner who had not been seen before but was immensely dominant. So much so, in fact, that since he started uploading runs, he's held 27 out of 29 new world record sets from then to now. His first streak lasted for 19 consecutive world records, spanning from March 23rd, 2021 to May 14th, 2022. Week after week, his times kept on getting faster and faster, with him beating his own previous records sometimes only a day or two after. During the show of dominance, Player 5 had discovered and optimized the route far more than what had been done previously. Firstly, the routing of the shrines in the Great Plateau was changed once more, this time to bombs, magnesis, stasis, into cryo. This was due to the discovery of the most impactful glitch to date, Bowlift Smuggle Sliding, or BLS sliding for short. BLS sliding is a glitch which allows you to fly forever with just a bow and a throwable object. With the sequence of unequipping and re-equipping shields while holding your bow, Link enters a state where he holds the throwable object in the hand. While in this state, all you need to do is hold B and climb onto a ledge to fly. The speed of the flight will slow down, but you can actually jiggle your control stick left and right really fast to keep the speed and fly backwards. From the Shrine of Resurrection clip, Player 5 makes his way straight to the temple to pick up some items and most notably a pot in which he will use to perform BLS sliding with, all the way to the bomb shrine. With bombs obtained, Player 5 proceeds to travel to all the shrines using BLS sliding with the bombs, and also skips a large majority of all the shrines with wind bombing straight to the end, saving an enormous amount of time. After receiving the paraglider, he once again BLS slides to Ganon's castle. With a new route of Ganon's castle which allowed him to craft potions before entering, and the help of more clipping through walls, Player 5 had reached the Blights at 1657, a record-breaking pace. His run through the Blights was nothing special, but in Calamity Ganon he got good RNG and got an instant laser from Ganon. With the biggest RNG point of the fight gone, he ended the run at 24:15. Player 5 looked to be unstoppable. Until the 17th of June 2022. A player by the name of Korox had uploaded a run besting Player 5's previous record by almost 5 seconds at 24:10. Korox was a player who had been running the game during Player 5's long streak of records, and though he had a few runs where he potentially could have taken the world record, he had always either had a slight choke at the blight or had bad RNG. But on the 17th of June, he did it. His run through the Great Botw was nothing remarkable. In fact, his paraglider split was 8 seconds behind of the world records. But thanks to an absolutely insane castle split, he entered the blights on a record pace at 16:43. Unfortunately, he lost some time on the blights due to bad RNG and missed an arrow on Water Blight Ganon. He went through Calamity Ganon smoothly with an instant laser in phase 2. This was the first run in over a year that had been a world record that was not Player 5's. Of course, Player 5 would come back with a record of their own. Almost 2 months later, on the 15th of August 2022, Player 5 set a new record time of 23:53. This was a substantial record. It was the first run that was a sub 24, a feat that is impressive in itself, but second, it was a whole 17 seconds ahead of Korox's record. With a huge difference in records, it would be natural to think that either a new strat was developed or a new route, but this isn't the case. Player 5 had run the game with the strats and routing that he was doing previously. It was simply an insanely optimized run. He saved time on every single split. The only real time losses were very small things like grabbing an extra fish and getting some slightly bad RNG in the blights. After this record, Player 5 stopped running the game for a while. Fast forward 4 months to January 2023, a few days before GDQ. GDQ is a semi-annual video game speedrun charity marathon. The first event held by GDQ every year is Awesome Games Done Quick, held in January, which raises money for cancer. Player 5 was preparing to take part in this event when he randomly broke his own record with a time of 23:51. He then managed to get the time down to 23:50 3 months later. Now was a race between Player 5 and Korox to get the first sub 23:50 run. And on the 26th of April 2023, only 18 days after Player 5's 23:50, it happened. The first sub 23:50 run was submitted by Korox, improving Player 5's time by 1 singular second at 23:49. It was a shame because he had lost about 12 seconds between the Cryo Shrine and the Blight split, but he stated that he wasn't done. 9 days later, on the 5th of May 2023, Player 5 set a new record of 23:42 with an incredibly unbalanced run. His plateau wasn't exactly awful, but compared to his best, it loses by 15 seconds. However, everything after that was amazing. He also got lucky on Calamity Ganon as he picked up a Claymore with attack up, saving around 3 seconds. There were no new world records made for a long time after this. 10 months later, Player 5 noticed that his Switch had been loading the game very slow compared to what was expected, and this was because he had downloaded the game on his SD drive instead of his system memory. He swapped to a different Switch where Breath of the Wild was installed in system memory, and this improved the loading speed dramatically. On the 19th of March 2024, Player 5 finally broke his last score with a time of 23:36. He started to incorporate a wind bomb after the stasis shrine in this route instead of a stasis launch since the setup is faster. He would once again beat his own record only 3 days afterwards on the 23rd of March 2024 with a time of 23:30, just barely missing sub 23:30. But it was definitely possible, as even in this run he had notable time losses. He missed the stasis shrine clip and missed a pre-fire on Dark Beast Ganon. Nevertheless, he still ended up getting a time save in every split apart from bombs where he was exactly equal. Sub 23:30 was on the horizon. And finally, the world record that stays today happened only 1 hour after the last run. This was almost the perfect run for the strategies used at a time of 23:23. And of course, it was made by Player 5. His plateau split was decent, saving 1.5 seconds at 12:46. Where he really gained time was the castle and blights. Calamity Ganon was also decent, not the best, but he once again got lucky by getting an attack up Claymore which made up for the time loss. In half a week, Player 5 had dropped the world record by 13 seconds, whereas the score was previously untouched in 10 months. And this is where the world record holds today. This was the history of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild world record speedruns. Thanks for watching.